You are the star of stars. 15 million a picture, I've read. I was just the maid as far as he was concerned. It felt like I was playing a bit part in one of your movies, but trust me, I was planning to steal this scene. I knew I had to do something pretty dramatic soon. He was going to wonder why I was still standing there. I didn't know if I'd be too scared to do it if he actually looked at me. But then he did. And everything just happened. I shoved the gun into his face and pulled the trigger. Such a tiny action. Almost a reflex. A second later, he was dead, just blown away. I could do pretty much whatever I wanted to now. So I walked around to the passenger side, climbed inside the car, and waited for you. Nice, nice car. So plush and comfortable, with leather, soft lighting, a bar and small refrigerator stocked with all your favorites. Twix bars, Antonia? Shame, shame. In a way, it was too bad you came out of the house so soon. I liked being in your limo. The quiet time, the luxury. In those few minutes, I could see why you would want to be who you are. Or at least, who you were. My heart is beating faster just writing this, remembering the moment. You stood outside the car for a second before you opened the door for yourself. Dressed down, without makeup, yet still breathtaking. You couldn't see me or the dead driver through the one-way glass, but I could see you. That's how it's been all week, Antonia. I've been right there, and you've never noticed me. What an incredible moment this was for me. Me, inside your car. You, outside, in a tweed jacket that made you look very Irish and down to earth. When you got in, I immediately locked the doors and put down the partition. You got this amazing look on your face the second you saw me. I'd seen that same look before, in your movies, when you pretended to be afraid. What you probably didn't realize was that I was just as scared as you. My whole body was quivering. My teeth were hitting together. That's why I shot you before either of us could say anything. The moment went by way too fast, but I had planned on that. That's what the knife was for. I just hope it isn't your children who find you. I wouldn't want them to see you that way. All they need to know is that Mommy is gone, and she's not coming back. Those poor children. Andy, Tia, Petra, Elizabeth. They're the ones I feel so sorry for. Poor, poor babies without their mommy. Could anything be sadder? I know something that is. But that's my secret, and no one will ever know.
Chapter 4.
Mary Smith's alarm clock went off at 5:30 a.m., but she was already awake, wide awake, thinking about, of all things, how to make a porcupine costume for her daughter Ashley's school play. What would she possibly use for porcupine needles? It had been quite a late night, but she never seemed to be able to shut off the mental ticker tape that was her to-do list. They needed more peanut butter, Kid's Crest, Zyrtec syrup, and one of those little bulbs for the bathroom nightlight. Brendan had soccer practice at 3, which started at the same time as and 15 miles away from Ashley's tap class. Figure that one out. Adam's sniffles could have gone either way in the night, and Mary could not afford another sick day. Speaking of which, she needed to put in for some second shifts at her job. And this was the quiet part of the day. It wasn't long before she was at the stove, calling out orders and fielding the usual spate of morning-time needs. "Brendan, help your sister tie her shoes. Please, Brendan, I'm talking to you." "Mommy, my socks feel weird." "Turn them inside out." "Can I take Cleo to school? Can I please, Mommy? Oh, please." "Yes, but you have to get her out of the dryer." "Brendan, what did I ask you to do?" Mary expertly flipped a portion of perfectly fluffed scrambled eggs onto each of their plates, just as the bread in the 4-slice toaster popped up. "Breakfast!" While the 2 older ones dug in, she took Adam to his room and dressed him in his red overalls and a sailor shirt. She cooed to him as she carried him back out to his high chair. "Who's the handsomest sailor in town? Who's my little man?" she asked, and tickled him under his chinny-chin-chin. "I'm your little man," Brendan said with a smile. "I am, Mommy." "You're my big little man," Mary returned, chucking him lightly under the chin. She squeezed his shoulders. "And getting bigger every day." "That's 'cause I clean my plate," he said, chasing the last bit of egg onto a fork with the flat of his thumb. "You're a good cook, Mommy," Ashley said. "Thank you, sweetheart. Now come on, let's go, BBWW." While she cleared the dishes, Brendan and Ashley marched back down the hallway in a sing-song chant. "Brush, brush, wash, wash, teeth and hair, hands and face, brush, brush, wash, wash." While the older two washed up, she put the dishes into the sink for later, gave Adam's face a quick once-over with a wet paper towel, took the kids' lunches, packed the night before, out of the fridge, and dropped each one into the appropriate knapsack. "I'm going to put Adam into his car seat," she called out. "Last one outside is a googly worm." Mary hated the rotten egg thing, but she knew the value of a little innocent competition for keeping the kids in gear. She could hear them squealing in their rooms, half laughing, half scared they'd be the last one out the door and into her old jalopy. God, who said jalopy anymore? Only Mary. And who said God? G-A-W-D? As she strapped Adam in, she tried to remember what it was that had kept her up so late the night before. The days, and now the nights as well, seemed to blur all together in a jumble of cooking, cleaning, driving, list-making, nose-wiping, and more driving. L.A. definitely had its major league disadvantages. It seemed as if they spent half their lives in the car, stalled in traffic. She should really get something more fuel-efficient than the big old Suburban she had brought west. She looked at her watch. Somehow, 10 minutes had gone by. 10 precious minutes. How did that always happen? How did she seem to lose time? She ran back to the front door and ushered Brendan and Ashley outside. "What's taking you two so long? We're going to be late again. Jeezum crow, just look at the time," said Mary Smith.
Chapter 5. Here we were, smack in the middle of an age of angry and cynical myth-busting, and suddenly I was being called America's Sherlock Holmes in one of the country's more influential, or at least best-read magazines. What a complete crock that was. And it was still bugging me that morning. An investigative journalist named James Truscott had decided to follow me around and report on the murder cases I was working on. I'd fooled him, though. I'd gone on vacation with the family. "I'm going to Disneyland," I told Truscott, and laughed the last time I'd seen him in D.C. The writer had only smirked in response. For anyone else, maybe a vacation was an ordinary thing. Happened all the time, twice a year sometimes. For the Cross family, it was a major event, a new beginning. Appropriately, a whole new world was playing in the hotel lobby as we passed through. "Come on, you pokes!" Janny urged us as she ran ahead. Damon, newly minted teenager, was somewhat more reserved. He stuck close and held the door for Nana as we passed from air-conditioned comfort out into bright Southern California sunshine. Actually, it was a full-out attack on the senses from the moment we left the hotel. Scents of cinnamon, fried dough, and some kind of zingy Mexican food reached our noses all at the same time. I could also hear the distant roar of a freight train, or so it seemed, along with screams of terror, the good kind, the don't-stop kind. I'd heard enough of the other kind to appreciate the difference. Against all odds, I had put in for vacation, been approved, and actually gotten out of town before FBI Director Burns or his people came up with a half a dozen reasons why I couldn't go away at this time. The kids' first choice had been Disney World and Epcot Village in Florida. For my own reasons, and also since it was hurricane season down south, I steered us to Disneyland in their newest park, Disney's California Adventure. California, indeed. Nana Mama shaded her eyes from the sun glare. I haven't seen a naturally occurring thing since we arrived here, Alex. Have you? She pursed her lips and pulled down the corners of her mouth, but then she couldn't help laughing, putting herself in stitches. That's Nana. She almost never laughs at other people. She laughs with them. You can't fool me, old woman. You just love to see us all together, anywhere, anyhow, anytime. We could be in Siberia for all you'd care. She brightened. Now Siberia, that's somewhere I would like to see. A trip on the Trans-Siberian Railroad, the Sion Mountains, Lake Baikal. You know, it wouldn't kill American children to take a vacation once in a while where they actually learn something about another culture. I rolled my eyes in Damon and Janny's direction. Once a teacher, always a teacher, Janny said. Always a teacher, repeated little Alex. He was 3 years old, and our own little mynah bird. We got to see him too infrequently, and I was partially amazed by everything he did. His mother had taken him back to Seattle more than a year ago. The painful custody struggles between Christine and me were still dragging on. Nana's voice cut through my thoughts. Where do we go for... Soaring over California. Janny had it out before Nana was even finished asking the question. Damon chimed in. Okay, but then we're hitting California screaming. Janny stuck her tongue out convivially at her brother, and he gently hip-checked her in return. It was like Christmas morning for these two. Even the disagreements were mostly in fun. Sounds like a plan, I said. And then we'll hit It's Tough to Be a Bug for your little brother. I scooped up Alex Jr. in my arms and held him close, kissed both of his cheeks. He looked back at me with his peaceable little smile. Life was good again. Chapter 6. That was when I saw James Truscott approaching, all 6'5" of him, with waves of red hair hanging down over the shoulders of a black leather jacket. Somehow, some way, Truscott had gotten his editors in New York to agree to do a continuing series on me, based on my track record for getting involved with high-profile murder cases on a fairly regular basis. Maybe it was because the last one, involving the Russian Mafia, had been the worst case of my career, and also very high profile. I had taken the liberty of doing some research on Truscott. He was only 30, educated at Boston University. His specialty was true crime, and he'd published 2 non-fiction books on the Mafia. A phrase I'd heard about him stuck in my head. He plays dirty. Alex, he said, smiling and extending his hand as if we were old friends meeting by chance. Reluctantly, I shook hands with Truscott. It wasn't that I disliked him or objected to his right to write whatever stories he wanted to, but he had already intruded into my life in ways that I felt were inappropriate, like writing daily emails and arriving at crime scenes, and even at our house in D.C. Now here he was showing up on our family vacation. Mr. Truscott, I said in a quiet voice, you know I've declined to cooperate with these articles. No problem. He grinned. I'm cool with that. I'm not, I said. I'm officially off the clock. This is family time. Can you give us some space? We're at Disneyland. Truscott nodded as though he understood completely. But then he said, your vacation will be interesting to our readers. The calm before the storm kind of thing. This is great. Disneyland is perfect. You have to understand that, right? I don't, Nana said, and stepped toward Truscott. Your right to stick out your arm ends at the other person's nose. You ever hear that wise bit of advice, young man? Well, you should have. You know you have some kind of nerve being here. Just then, though, I caught something even more disturbing out of the corner of my eye. a movement that didn't